The Stralk. Art and story by Gary McMillan. After a season of sunshine and water and a sprinkling of vitamin supplements, the Crabbits were soon ready for harvest. Jason and his wife, Louise, had been selected as test growers of the Crabbit seed embryos for the first commercial crop of the plant-animal hybrid known as Plummal. San Mondo Corp had been developing Plummal hybrids for several years and made them available to selected growers only this last winter. Jason chose the Crabbit cultivar because of its medium size and high protein content. Also, the picture in the brochure reminded him of Bugs Bunny, growing in the ground like a carrot. He just had to see one of these things with his own eyes. Jason and Louise were on their way home in the pickup after an evening out in town before a busy week of bringing in the crop. They had just pulled off the blacktop onto the gravel lane to their house when they spotted a shadowy form stalking amongst the waving crabbit ear foliage near the road. Louise clutched at Jason's arm just as Jason turned the truck sharply to reveal a figure in the glaring headlights. Louise shrieked. There it was, some damned two-legged creature holding a crabbit up for all to see, caught red-handed. It kind of looked like a naked person, but it obviously wasn't, not with those gigantic dinner plate eyes and the long nodules running down its back. Jason laid on the horn to scare it off. The creature melted away into the darkness, along with its limp crabbit. Retching the steering wheel, a gasping Jason pulled the truck back onto the lane and spat gravel all the way to the house. Looking frantically over his shoulder, he somehow got Louise inside and bolted the door. He grabbed the phone to call. Who? Who should he call? Who would believe him? He called San Mondo. This looked like something they would know about. Of course, he only got a recorded message. He blurted out a description of what they had seen. He paced as Louise sat huddled in a kitchen chair. They both started talking at once. What was that hideous thing? Only after a long and agitated speculation did they conclude the thing must in fact have been some unlikely byproduct of San Mondo research that had spread beyond the research farms a few kilometers away. After a mostly sleepless night, Jason called his San Mondo representative first thing in the morning about the terrifying incident. "Oh yes," the rep said blandly. "Thank you so much for calling, Mr. Fulton. I just want to say how happy we are to have you and your wife in the San Mondo family, and to have you in the Plummal program." Jason could imagine the beaming smile on the rep's face as he talked. The guy always talked with a smile. Though Jason liked the new crop San Mondo offered, he wished he had been given someone else to deal with. The rep continued, in his sliding voice, "Let me assure you, we are here to answer all of your concerns. Now, we've had a few reports of some other minor incidents from other growers. There's really nothing to worry about. It's just a blip. What you saw was just a Stralk. They're quite harmless and only go after crabbits. We have developed a very effective solution and will send someone out tomorrow. Let me reassure you, the issue will be taken care of right away." Taken aback by the seeming lack of alarm at this Stralk issue, and not at all reassured, Jason hung up the phone and now wondered what a Stralk was. He looked on Google and found nothing. He looked on the San Mondo site and saw no mention. He did discover how big the corporation was and all of the different divisions it had. It was big. He noticed with interest there was even a division for defense research. In the end, all he knew was San Mondo had better take care of the Stralks. The next day came and went, and no one arrived from San Mondo. As dusk settled in, Jason looked out over the fields from the upper window of the house and saw 4 Stralks wandering amongst the helpless crabbits, pulling them up and stuffing them under their arms. That tears it, Jason thought, and he ran downstairs and out the door with his shotgun, firing shots in the air. The figures ran away, but what good was that? They'd just run farther into the field and were soon out of sight in the growing darkness. The sun rose to another morning. Before Jason could call San Mondo, one of their trucks pulled up into the yard, carrying what looked like a large shipping container. This must be it, thought Jason. It seemed rather large, but as long as it worked, Jason would be satisfied. The driver jumped down. "Are you Mr. Fulton? The one with the stroke problem?" "That's me. I saw a bunch of them last night. It's about time you got here. What are those things anyways?" replied Jason. "Yeah, sorry about that. We've been a little busier than usual. Actually, it's been a bit of a shit show at corporate down the road. As for what they are, I don't have a clue. Some screw up in the lab, probably. Here, sign these forms, please," said the driver. One by one, Jason signed the agreement of use form and acceptance of conditions form and release waiver of indemnity form and some other form. He assumed it to be similar to the mountain of forms he had signed for the crabbits. What other choices were there? San Mondo had caused the problem, and now they could fix it. Meanwhile, the driver was explaining about the environmentally friendly nature of the contents and how it was patented biocontrol agent that worked super fast and how to just let it do its job and stay out of the way, etc. The driver then lowered the container and shouted out, "Okay, take it easy today. Get a good night's sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. Pick up the container." Then he drove away. Jason looked at the container as it sat there in the gravel yard. It was basically a big steel box with what looked like a ventilator grid near the top, and with one end being a large sealed hatch. There was a typical warning sign, with no doubt a lot of fine print about safety procedures and hazards for use and all of that regular stuff that Jason usually didn't bother reading. He had read it all before and now relied on common sense. The interesting thing was that, according to the driver, the container had a timed release feature whereby the hatch would open in the middle of the night and release some kind of green-friendly and fast-acting biological pest control agent. That sounded okay by Jason. He didn't want a bunch of deadly pesticides on his lovely crabbits. Jason woke up sometime after midnight to relieve his bladder and heard a steel clang out in the yard. That would be the container opening. Jason took a while to pee that damned swollen prostate and then decided to go outside and check things out. After talking to the rep, he wasn't so worried about the Stralks anymore, except for what they were doing to the crabbits. Maybe he would catch a glimpse of the biocontrol agent in action. Standing out in the gravel drive in front of the house, he spotted the tall open hatch on the container. The yard light slanted only a little way into the interior, but it seemed to be quite empty. He could hear a faint commotion out in the fields, but couldn't see a thing. The yard light didn't reach much beyond the compound either. Why didn't he think to bring a flashlight? Jason strained to see into the darkness. Over the years, he'd learned a fair bit about biocontrol agents. They were often special germs of some kind that infected the insects or nasty plants you wanted to get rid of. They could also be some type of good insect that got rid of the bad insect. They always took some time to work, but the Stralk agent apparently worked overnight. He looked once again at the open container. How had the bioagent made its way into the field? If it was a germ, he couldn't see any kind of sprayer. Maybe it was a drone that flew out and sprayed in the dark, but he couldn't hear the distinct sound of a drone. The container must have been filled with good insects or something like that, which just spread out on their own. He looked around on the gravel and the open hatch and couldn't see any stragglers. There should have been a few stragglers. Maybe there weren't very many of whatever had been in there. which would mean they were bigger than bugs, and that they had all made it into the field. Maybe there were only a few of them. That would make them pretty big if they had to take down a bunch of man-sized Stralks. He looked again at the large open hatchway. Whatever they were meant to go after Stralks and only Stralks. That was how biocontrols worked, after all. Distractedly, he heard Louise at the door to the house behind him and the crunch of tentative steps as she came outside. He felt her touch on his shoulder. He had convinced her that though they were ugly, the Stralks weren't going to hurt anybody. She was still cautious enough that he was surprised she had come outside. "Honey, what are you doing out here?" she asked. "Oh, the container is open. Did you see anything?" Jason was still thinking hard. So this fairly large biocontrol agent goes after Stralks, which are just people-sized, two-legged crabbit-eaters. But wasn't he himself a people-sized two-legged crabbit-eater? And Louise looked much the same. Would she look like a Stralk to a pest control agent? And what the hell is she doing out here anyways? Suddenly alarmed, Jason turned to face his wife. "Louise, we've got to get back to the..." His voice trailed off. Past his wife at the corner of the house, he saw a hulking biocontrol agent step out of the shadows and into view under the yard light. Louise saw the look of alarm on Jason's face and jolted at the sound of a strangely accented, gravelly voice behind her. She swung around and almost fainted. Jason let out a faint whimper. "What the hell are you two doing out here?" asked the voice, which belonged to the hulking biocontrol agent. It was a 7-foot-tall, smoothly furred man-like creature, almost as wide as tall, with a wrestler's build. It had small black eyes, and a plastic tag was clipped to its ear. Seeing the two recoil, it continued, "Hey, relax. These are only Stralks." The creature waved vaguely at some figures behind it. "They're as timid as mice, but you're supposed to be asleep. You shouldn't be out here seeing this." "What the?" said Jason in a daze as he moved to stand protectively in front of his terrified wife. The biocontrol agent walked closer under the yard light, followed by 7 Stralks in a huddle, shuffling along uneasily. Bringing up the rear was another enormous furred bioagent. It also had an ear tag. The lead agent explained, "Shit, we didn't expect this. They brought us in this morning way too early to dump us off like that. How are we supposed to find Stralks in the daytime? So all we can do is sit in there and wait like animals. Such assholes. Anyway, we got these all rounded up, and you two ought to get back to bed and forget you saw anything." One of the Stralks complained in a whistling voice, "And we hardly had a chance to get any." "It's okay, Brev," said the second bioagent. "It's not your fault. You're just trying to do what you thought was going to be your job until those morons in the lab got everything wrong." Jason gaped at the biocontrol agent, and then at the Stralk named Briff. Briff replied. "But they said we should pick them. And so that's what we did. We smelled them and walked here and..." "I know. But you weren't supposed to walk here. You weren't even supposed to be outside," Agent 2 said, and then shook its head. "And then one of those idiots left the friggin' gate open, and now we will all pay for it. But listen, you Stralks just can't help yourselves from picking crabbits. They built you that way, and now we all have to go back and see what happens. Maybe it won't be so bad this time." Jason detected a note of worry in the agent's voice with his last remark. Another Stralk joined in. "It feels good to pick a crabbit," Jason asked in growing bafflement. "Wait a minute. You all know each other?" "Oh, yeah," replied Agent 1. "We were all spawned together on the farm, the San Mondo farm down the way. They are designed to be the pickers." It pointed at the Stralks and then gestured at itself, its look-alike in the rear. "And we are designed to be the foreman, the solution to the whole labor shortage thing. And as for the crabbits, well, they aren't the brightest bunch. But what do you expect when you mix a rabbit with a carrot? But they sure seem to be the most popular with you farmers. Anyhow, as you can see, there are a lot of kinks in the system. Once again, it's all turned out to be a screw-up, and as you can probably guess..." At this point, it pointed to the ear tags. "We are all licensed property of San Mondo, and you weren't supposed to know any of this. I really wish, for your sakes, that you hadn't come outside." Jason now felt a new tinge of fear. He wasn't nervous of the agents anymore. They seemed pretty decent. It's what they kept hinting at. What had he gotten himself into? Agent 2 called out to the Stralks. "All right, let's everybody head into the can and take it easy until morning." Glancing at the farmer couple, he continued, "You might want to tell corporate about what you just saw, but I wouldn't recommend it. But they are probably going to figure out you saw things anyways, so best of luck to you both." Jason gulped as the group trod past and filed into the opened container. As it walked past Jason, Agent 2 muttered, "If they give you a chance, put in a good word for us. It might help us at least. We're just trying to do our best." It jerked its thumb at the Stralks. "And they can't help it." It glanced into the darkness to the east, in the direction of the San Mondo farms, and waved its hand in an encompassing gesture, which eerily included Jason and his wife. "I don't know Who knows how long any of us will be around?